Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rinkus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Kristen Humiston, a passionate therapist, coach, and mom of 6 who brings both clinical experience and lived experience to the work of healing. She's a licensed advanced practice social worker who is certified in Brainspotting and EMDR, and her specialty is working with trauma and stress-related challenges, including PTSD, anxiety, relational problems, and spiritual wounding. She tells her story more in episode 1, but Kristen's journey started in the music world as she owned a music studio for over 20 years while homeschooling. Then, in 2019, after a season of personal and family trauma and healing, Kristen felt drawn to pursue therapy as a career. Today, she helps women and couples rediscover their worth and step into their strength with courage and clarity through her Appleton-based business, Courageous Healing Therapy. Kristen loves to learn new things, and with kids ranging from 9 to 21 years old, her most recent hobbies include being a sports mom chauffeur, pottery classes, relearning 5th grade math, and spending time with her husband. All right, it's time to invite Kristen to the mic, so let's dive in.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Motherhood Alliance podcast. We are in our final episode with Kristen. Welcome back.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we have had just a phenomenal last couple episodes with you, Kristen. I mean, we talked about mental health struggles for motherhood. We've talked about, all the different kinds of ways that we can stop leaking and spilling our trauma or our wounds into our motherhood and to how we parent. If you guys haven't listened to the first 3 episodes, definitely do that. The last episode too is really interesting as far as helping people understand what highly sensitive people are and how that might affect your parenting and your kids possibly too. But in this episode, we're going to kind of switch things up a little bit in that we're going to talk specifically about some things that you specialize in, which is Brainspotting and EMDR therapy. So first of all, what is Brainspotting? What is EMDR? And what's the difference between those two?
Yeah, great questions. I am excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
So Brainspotting is a therapy modality that is useful for accessing, processing emotions, memories, and accesses the middle brain, specifically our amygdala, our hippocampus, where emotions and memory are stored, kind of bypasses the prefrontal cortex so that we can leave some of the thinking out of it a bit and allow to come up what's actually in us, up and out. EMDR is also similar. It does the same thing. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is what that stands for. And I'll give a little history on both of those. EMDR was developed in 1987 and moving forward by Francine Shapiro, who first noticed that her own eye movements, she was trying to think through a problem, and she noticed that when she moved her eyes back and forth, suddenly she had clarity in her thoughts. So she became curious as a therapist about, what happened there? Why did that happen? And so researching and utilizing that, more developing that, she developed this therapy modality, EMDR. So eye movements and the Brainspotting uses the same concept. Where we look affects how we feel. That's Brainspotting. David Grand uses that saying all the time, where we look influences how we feel. And so both of those using eye movements and placement for being able to process more from the middle brain.
Okay, so you said EMDR is movement, like kind of looking back and forth. And then are you talking at the same time? Is this blended with talk therapy?
Yeah, so both of these are more of a brain-based therapy. You can talk, and I'll get into the differences. So EMDR specifically was developed utilizing the back and forth, quick back and forth eye movements. In the years since and in recent years, we've learned that bilateral stimulation, whether that's tapping, you guys can't see me in the podcast if you're listening, but tapping back and forth on either side of you, legs, shoulders. We have what are called tappers, and they actually like vibrate alternately. In hands, you can hold on to them. That's bilateral stimulation. Both of these utilize bilateral stimulation for processing. And we know like brain training and brain training games, things like that, when we cross that middle line, it helps the right and the left brain talk to each other. Right.
Interesting.
I'm really trying to dig in to just try to understand what this is. So taking it one step further, if somebody is coming in for, let's just stay on EMDR for a second, you're having them do these eye movements. You said talk may or may not be a part of it, right? So are they just essentially sitting there doing these eye movements and they're kind of processing their own trauma just through their thoughts at the same time? And then the end of the session comes and it's like, how did it go?
Like, how does this work? Yeah. What does a therapy session
How
look
is
like?
this actually looking like?
Okay, so let me back up just a little bit. EMDR was developed first. And then David Grand is a therapist who was utilizing EMDR, worked alongside Francine Shapiro, and actually worked with a athlete. And she was having a problem in her performance that she always came. It was a ice skater, and she always came to a stuck point, and she could not complete this movement. So he noticed in working with her that he was using EMDR, and then noticed a reflective reaction in her, and he just decided to hold his hand still, because when this was first developed, the eye movements were actually, again, can't see me, but I'm going back and forth with my hand, with my fingers held up, were done by the therapist like this, rapidly back and forth. And he just held his fingers still and allowed her to process in this one location while he held it still.
When you say process, are you supposed to be thinking about the specific trigger that you're coming in for?
You're allowing whatever to come up. So some people process more visually. They might have images coming in their mind. Some people process with words, and they might have words or thoughts coming up. Colors, they might smell things. We process, our brain brings up a lot of different things. So it's allowing whatever the brain has there. So the therapist is quiet during that processing time. And again, the brain spotting then developed more as a find kind of this gateway. And we find that by watching the client's body reflective process. And it kind of is no one knows. There's lots of research about EMDR and brain spotting. We still don't know the exact way the brain is working on this. But the idea is with EMDR, it's taxing the brain because we're having you think about the issue. We're having you move your eyes back and forth or experience that bilateral stimulation. And so this actually gets the brain going and processing through. So we can see that happening on the outside as therapists by emotional reactions. We can by what they report they're having. So in EMDR, they're doing bilateral stimulation quickly, back and forth, either eye movements or tapping. And then every about 20 to 30 seconds, this is part of what we're trained to do, we pause that bilateral stimulation and we ask, what's coming up for you right now? We're just checking in. And then they have an opportunity to share. Some people want to process longer, so we don't interrupt that. Some shorter. And there's a whole variety of reasons why we choose as therapists to either shorten that processing time when we're doing the bilateral stimulation or lengthen it, depending on on the context of the client, on the content that they're processing. So it can be both in terms of talking and processing just with brain, but it's not to consider or reflect on what's coming up. It's just to notice what's coming up.
Okay.
This reminds me of like when somebody's sleeping, their eye movements go back and forth. Is that similar?
Yes.
Okay. Because you're thinking, you're processing.
Right.
While you
in your
dream.
REM sleep.
Yeah.
So interesting. So then to get back to your story of the figure skater. So he was using EMDR and then he paused, and that's where brain spotting came into effect, because brain spotting is essentially using a specific stop or eye paused movements or a certain direction your eyes are facing in order to release or bring up some of those thoughts. Is that correct?
Correct. That's essentially what's happening.
Are you typically blending both of these in a session, or is there a time or space where one is appropriate versus the other?
Depends on your training.
Okay. Does it depend on the client and what they're coming in for as well?
It depends on if the therapist has been trained in both or not.
Sure.
So I know my clients, right? And I know how they process. I know also the content they're processing. So how I choose, because that was one of your questions as well, how do you know which one to use? I always offer both. It's what the client wants to use. They are the ones who know themselves most. I can make a recommendation based on content and based on personality, but I offer and I explain both, and then they choose. I actually have clients who try both and then see which one seems to feel better for them. The brain spotting that it pauses, what we say, follow the tail of the comet. We follow our client and where their processing is going. It's a little more open. If you're thinking about a container, and we can do this in EMDR to an extent, but EMDR is much more structured. Brain spotting is a little more open. So what's coming up today? And it might be an emotional thing. It might be a current issue, but it might be a past thing. It might be, this trauma that I keep having nightmares about, and I'm avoiding this location driving here because something happened. And so I have to process through this so that I can be released from that emotional intensity that's holding me and the nightmares, the flashbacks. And so when I'm thinking about those things, both EMDR and brain spotting are, again, a processing tool, a way to release something that's stuck.
So when you say release, maybe there's a past trauma that is triggering panic attacks. Let's just say that. And by doing this, you get that epiphany of, this is it. This is what I experienced. I'm maybe re-feeling those feelings. Maybe some emotions are coming out, things like that. So now it's forefront in their mind, but then how do you actually release that so that the panic attacks stop?
That is what that's what the brain is doing. So essentially, if you think about your kid's dirty room, but it's not just your kid's dirty room. It's also that the socks are in the living room, and then down in the family room, there was the dishes left over, and somebody dropped their pants and got in their pajamas right there, right? All this stuff is everywhere. There's no container for it. I need to gather it up, and then I need to put it in the right place. Like, where does it go? The trash is going to go out to the trash bin. The dirty dishes are going to go into the dishwasher, and the dirty clothes are going to go into the hamper and then go through the laundry. And everything is put where it needs to go. The brain will naturally do that for us, but it needs a space to do that in that's safe enough that the brain feels safe enough. So that is part of our job as a therapist. We're creating that safe environment, that trained structure, that we can hold the space and help you remain grounded, or we can help you get back grounded if something was difficult coming up in processing. And then the brain just does its thing. It's somewhat magical. And in brain spotting, I use a wand to hold the eye position. And so sometimes I do say that I have a magic wand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So you're trained in understanding as somebody is reacting to your check-ins, you now know where to hold your wand.
In brain spotting, generally, it stays in the same place. And it may stay, we might do a 20-minute processing session. We might spend all 60 minutes processing, depending on how familiar with brain spotting the individual is. And again, the content that they're processing. And I think one of your questions you had asked earlier as well was, is this just for past trauma? No. Both EMDR and brain spotting can process current emotions and events going on, as well as actually future ones. So concerns when somebody's really worried about what's going to happen in the future, we can actually process that and start there as well. The reality is our brain is all connected. So it will end up, again, the brain will do what it needs to do to process the pieces and put them where they need to go.
I find that really interesting how you talked about the future piece. And I'm guessing this is a little bit of what that ice skater was seeking out, right? Is she was probably getting stuck in something that would have happened in the past and maybe couldn't get past it. But then also future-wise, next competition, she needed to be able to almost visualize and think through and get past the past to go into the future.
Whatever it is.
So this could be like if somebody has some sort of event coming up, maybe they have to do a public speaking event and they're feeling really anxious about it. It could help ease that anxiety.
Absolutely.
That's really, really interesting. Yeah.
How many sessions does this take? So, and there, you might have different answers for past trauma and healing from that versus if somebody has that public speaking event coming up. Walk us through what this actually looks like from a time standpoint.
Yeah, it's very individual.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally have experienced both forms. So I'll just talk about my story. I was in a car accident when I was 17, here locally, actually, very bad, massive pileup in the middle of winter on Highway 41. And I could never go by that place, right, without shaking. For a while, I grew out, I suppose, of being uncomfortable driving. I was the driver in that accident. But I still found that 20 years later, I was struggling with it. I had moved away for a time and then moved back. And I realized, oh, this is still an ongoing thing, because even on a sunny day driving in the same location, I would have a physical reaction. So one session, I go into my therapist and we say, okay, this is what I want to process today. And in one session, cleared it out.
So when you drive past that area now, do you feel anything?
No. I will tell you, for about 3 years, I felt nothing. And then this last winter, it was really interesting. We had some bad weather and I drive that same place now to and from work. And sure enough, one time driving by, tears just started flowing. I was feeling nothing and I got to the location of where I know my car first lost traction and tears just started coming. Now, in years past, before healing, I would have been like, what's wrong with me? But I just let them come. And then as soon as I was past that section, so it was about a mile section, that tears just flowed and then they just stopped.
So is that a reason to go back and reprocess that? Is that an indication that maybe you should do brain spotting again for that specific instance?
I can. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So this is something where traumas, they can be cleared and put into their container, but then they could creep back out. And so this is something that you could have as a tool in your toolbox.
Yeah. And when we see them creep back out, there's generally a current reason. So there have been some things in recent about year that have been highly stressful and emotional and going on. And so my guess is my reaction, like this recent winter, had nothing to do about actually that space.
Sure.
It was
just a release.
Yeah.
And you realized it too.
Yeah.
It was a recognition and
Yeah.
it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love brain spotting and EMDR. And I think once you've experienced it, and from watching my own clients, once they've experienced it, then they're like, oh, I'm not doing the other stuff. Let's brain spot today.
Oh, interesting.
Also, I find it very helpful for those who have like stuck emotions. Like They know they have something they'd really like to grieve, but they're having difficulty actually mourning and physically grieving, that we can move through those kinds of emotional stuck points with EMDR and brain spotting very effectively.
I do want to circle back to the how many sessions does this take? And I know it is going to be very dependent per person, but for the forward thinking thing. So I'm thinking about someone who gets nervous going on airplanes or has a specific public speaking event coming up. What is the time frame that they should start seeing someone like you before that event is coming?
I would say when you know it's coming. So if, you have to speak and it's in 6 months, like, go ahead, let's make a visit and let's talk about this. One future event that is common people will process is retirement, future life transition, empty nesting.
Oh, yeah.
So as soon as you can get in, the individual therapist also has kind of their own preferred method. So as a coach, I do not use therapeutic tools. And some of my coaching clients will have a therapist as well. And they'll just utilize that therapist to kind of spot process. And the therapist is happy with them. Other coaching clients have sought therapists for that. And the therapist wants to do talk therapy for multiple sessions, wants to integrate them into their process, and then decide if they want to offer EMDR or brain spotting. That's totally up to that individual therapist. So that would be a question you would want to ask if you want to do kind of spot processing. Part of the decision on our end as a therapist is, what else are we seeing here? And how able is the person to what we call state shift? So, and I have to assess that, which we do through a process. It can be just done in a session, but we're also observing, like, what are their support systems in life like? Because what we don't want to do, and what it would be negligible on our end, is to bring up all this stuff and then have somebody go back to their life without ability and resources to manage the emotional impact.
Yeah, definitely.
It could have long term. So we need to make sure that a person is stable before we move into any kind of reprocessing.
Yeah, makes sense.
How about kids? Is this appropriate for kids?
Absolutely. And there are EMDR therapists beginning to do it on animals.
Whoa.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, brain spotting therapists using brain spotting on animals as well, reducing anxiety from like storms.
Oh,
yeah.
That's fascinating.
So do you just like hold the treat out and go back and forth and have them follow the treat? Like, how do you, they don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah, no, they don't. A lot of times it is the tapping.
Okay.
And I have never done either of these on animals.
And that's
so I don't know.
The thing is that when you do it to an animal, like they don't have like a brain thinking like, oh, this isn't going to work or whatever. It's like, if it's working,
right,
it's working.
Raw data.
Raw data right there. Yeah.
It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating. So with brain spotting, you never have to share. We do have ways of checking in with the person, but you never have to share what's coming up for you.
Oh.
And so these modalities are helpful for like FBI agents when they can't share some of the things that they need to process.
Wow.
Oh, that's really, my husband is an officer, and I mean, that would be really helpful for just police, and just whatever they go through and whatever they see. Because a lot of times in the military too, you don't think like, you're like, these people, this therapist isn't going to know what I'm talking about or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they
we don't have to know.
Right. They generally don't want to talk about it out loud. But yeah.
Is this something someone can do to a degree at home? Or should they really be seeing a specialized trained therapist?
They really should be seeing somebody trained in working with either one of them.
Okay, good to know. Wow, this was such a great, insightful conversation. I loved it. Thank you so much for sharing with us what these definitions are and how they work. And obviously we had a lot of questions around it, but I think you really clarified it for me, and I want to try it.
Yeah, I do too. I think that so many people could benefit, and even just having this introductory, episode about Brainspotting and EMDR is just going to be really helpful for somebody to just start exploring that for themselves. Yeah.
Again, if you guys want to learn more about Kristen, you can head to the show notes. Her website is there. Her social media links are there, and her Motherhood Alliance profile is there. And we just want to say thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for what you're doing in our community. Thank you for educating us today. And we can't wait to continue to learn from you in the future.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.